I never thought I'd see the flashing lights of two police cruisers outside my quiet suburban home in the middle of the night. All because I dared to cut off the power line that my neighbor had been stealing from me. She stood there in her robe, tears streaming down her face like some victim out of a soap opera, pointing at me and calling me a criminal, when the truth was, she was the one stealing from me all along. That night, staring at those red and blue lights bouncing across the street, I realized I wasn't just dealing with an entitled neighbor, I was dealing with a full-blown HOA president who would do anything to keep control. When I first moved into this neighborhood, I was looking for peace. I had spent my career as an electrical engineer, the kind of guy who solved problems before they spiraled, who kept systems safe and precise. I wanted retirement to be about quiet mornings, mowing my yard, and maybe waving to a few neighbors while drinking coffee on the porch. For a while. That's exactly what it was, until I met Nancy Doyle. Nancy lived 2 houses down, and from day one, she made sure everyone knew she was president of the HOA. She wasn't shy about it either. Every conversation was about community standards or keeping up appearances, and she'd plaster her house with tacky decorations all year long, as if she was the mascot of the block. I ignored it. People are quirky. I didn't care. What I couldn't ignore was my second power bill. It nearly doubled from the first. And I live alone, with energy, efficient everything. At first, I thought maybe the power company screwed up. I tracked usage, shut off appliances, checked wiring. Everything looked fine, but the meter kept spinning like I had a nightclub running in the basement. That's when I opened my panel and saw it. A thin cable, tucked against the side, running right through the fence line into Nancy's yard. My stomach dropped. I'd spent decades studying electrical systems, and I knew exactly what I was looking at. Someone had tapped into my power. And not just anyone. Nancy. I followed that line straight into her junction box. I stood there in the dusk, crouched by the fence, staring at the proof. My blood boiled. It wasn't just the money, though that stung. It was the sheer audacity, the smug entitlement. Here was the HOA president, lecturing everyone about rules, while she was literally siphoning power like some back alley thief. I didn't go banging on her door, though. I knew better. I took pictures, recorded readings, even installed a smart monitor to track everything. My plan was simple. Gather proof. Call the electric company. Let them deal with her. But Nancy beat me to the punch. The very next morning, she came storming up my porch, pounding on my door like I owed her money. "My power went out last night," she said, arms crossed, fake frown plastered on her face. "Funny thing is, I saw you messing with your panel, and suddenly, bam, my lights cut off." I just stared at her. The gall it took to accuse me of cutting off her power, when she had been stealing mine for weeks, was almost laughable. I kept my voice calm, told her if she had electrical problems, maybe she should call an electrician. She gave me this tight little smile and walked away stiff as a board. That's when I knew. She was testing me. She wasn't going to drop it. She was going to push until I broke. A day later, I found a notice in my mailbox, an official HOA violation, claiming I'd been doing unauthorized electrical modifications. No signature, no inspection, just a thinly veiled threat. That's Nancy's playbook. Use the HOA letterhead like a weapon. Intimidate people into backing down. I laughed, tucked it into my file, and carried on. But inside, I was rattled. The woman was willing to lie, steal, and twist the system. How far was she willing to go? I got my answer at 3 in the morning. My doorbell rang non-stop, dragging me out of sleep. I checked my camera. Nancy was on my porch, hair wild, robe clutched around her, fists clenched. "My power's out again," she yelled when I cracked the door. "I know what you did. I have medical equipment. I could d." She was shaking with rage, and for a split second, she slipped, admitting that her power was somehow connected to mine. Before I could even respond, the street lit up with patrol car headlights. She had called the cops. Standing there under those lights, with two officers walking up, I felt that familiar tightness in my chest. For a moment, I wondered if I should have just let it go. Was I really the bad guy here? Was I dragging myself into a fight I couldn't win? That doubt hit me hard. I'm not proud of it, but I shook it off. Because I knew the truth. Nancy had stolen from me, lied about it, and now she was trying to bury me with the very system she ran. If I let her succeed, she'd do it again, to me or to someone else. The officers listened to her sob story, then turned to me. I kept calm, told them I had cameras, video and audio. Nancy's face cracked the second I said it. We pulled up the footage right there, her pounding on my door, her accusing me, her slip up about losing her power. The officer's posture shifted instantly. Suddenly, I wasn't the villain anymore. They warned her about wasting police resources, filed a report, and left. Nancy stormed off, fists balled, muttering under her breath. I knew that look. She had just lost a round, and it only made her more dangerous. The electric company's fraud team got involved next. They pulled her records and confirmed what I already suspected. Her bills had been unnaturally low for years. In fact, another neighbor had filed a similar complaint years ago, but it never stuck. She'd been running this scam for a long time. That should have been enough to scare her off. But not Nancy. People like her don't admit defeat, they escalate. I caught her on camera again, crouched near my fence line with a flashlight, fumbling with tools, trying to reconnect her illegal tap. When I confronted her, she froze, scrambled to her feet, muttering excuses. I told her plain, "You're trespassing. Next time, the cops will see this footage first." She stormed off, but I knew she'd be back. And she was. Only this time, she didn't come alone. It was close to midnight when my motion sensors tripped. I pulled up the feed and saw Nancy standing there with two men, both in dark clothes, one holding a crowbar, the other a tool bag. They weren't here to just reconnect a line. They were planning damage. Maybe to my system. Maybe to frame me. Maybe worse. My pulse pounded, but I didn't panic. I dialed the cops, grabbed the gun I hoped I'd never need, and stepped outside as my floodlights blazed across the yard. They froze like deer in headlights. I held up my phone so they could see I was still on the line with dispatch. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," I said, steady and loud. One of the men cursed, backed away. The other hesitated, but followed. Nancy stayed rooted, her face twisted with fury, trembling with it. She wanted to scream, to spin another story. But the sound of sirens cut through the night. Her shoulders sagged, and she turned, stomping off just before the cruisers arrived. This time. Though, the police didn't let her walk, with video of her trespassing. With burglary tools involved, they cuffed her on the spot, watching her being led away, screaming that I'd set her up, was the quietest victory I've ever felt. No neighbors clapped, no applause. Just the stillness of a street finally seeing her for what she was. The mighty HOA president, the self-appointed queen of the block, reduced to an angry woman in handcuffs under the harsh glow of streetlights. She tried to fight back even after that. Lawyers, complaints, desperate calls, but the evidence was stacked. The community stopped listening. Her authority had crumbled. A month later, a for sale sign went up in her yard. Movers came, loaded her tacky decorations into a truck, and she disappeared. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. She had already lost. Sitting on my porch the evening after she left, coffee warm in my hands, the air finally still. I thought about how close I'd come to backing down that night when the cops first showed up. How easy it would have been to let her keep stealing, just to avoid trouble. But if I had, she'd still be running her scam, still weaponizing the HOA to crush anyone who stood in her way. Sometimes the hardest thing isn't fighting back. It's refusing to let yourself be the victim. And that's the real lesson here. In neighborhoods ruled by HOA bullies, silence is surrender. But standing firm with proof is power. This is HOA Drama Unfolded.